repurposing content is one thing, but I also understand that sometimes people do that because they don't have time to do anything else. And even though I know it is still extra time, what would be a way that a church could utilize something that has already been prepared that they could create a podcast around?
Can you say that one more time? What do you mean by actually been prepared?
Well, as an example, the pastor has prepared the sermon already,
Okay.
right? Like, how could that preparation be repurposed without it being just a recording of the sermon?
Great question. I've seen some churches have like sermon wrap-ups or sermon refreshers where they will come together, maybe like a young adult in the church will interview the pastor, and he will say, okay, pastor, so your sermon this Sabbath was on the Ark of the Covenant, you know what I mean? Like, what can you take us through, like what you were thinking when you were writing that episode, you know, or that sermon?
Yeah.
And like right then you're coming at it with a dialogue. You have a host and you have a guest situation there. So it's a different format than just publishing the sermon. That is one way to do it. Another way could even just be to share like 10-minute video clips of the sermon itself and break it up into smaller segments.
Yeah, that's true. And even we've got yes, it's true that in our church we already have we have the Sabbath school lesson, but I think and again, it's a very small market, right? But I feel like if my church pastor released like a daily thought on the lesson, I would be much more likely to listen to that rather than one of the global Sabbath school publications, because I have context with that person, right?
Totally.
So it's another way that people could leverage content that's already been created, but they're just packaging it in a new way that people can get behind.
I really like that idea because it saves you a lot of time. You don't have to, since you've already written the content already, all you're doing is just going and having a conversation with someone about what you've written. It's really not that difficult.
Yes. Yeah. I often, because when I preach, I often reflect on the fact that I really don't enjoy sermon preparation. What I really enjoy is once I've prepared and it's all front of mind, and then I have the ability to let it all out. Like it's like, oh, this is like. For me anyway, I know not everyone's the same. Some people are the opposite. But for me, the preparation is the hard thing. The delivery is easy because it's all front of mind. And, I could preach a sermon and then I could sit down and I could do a Bible study with someone. Then I could record a podcast and I could be repurposing that same information for all of those things. But, you're just utilizing it in different channels in different ways. One of the other things that, as we were talking just a moment ago, I'm just trying to track down, I had a thought and I'm just chasing it right now. But another way that you could utilize audio would be to have you could use it to tell the stories of your members as well, because every member has their own testimony, has their own story, and there's plenty of testimony podcasts out there. But it really mixes things up because you never know what you're going to get, right?
Yeah.
If you talk to one person, their story might be, I've always loved the Lord. I grew up in a home, it was like this. And then you get to hear the unique experience of someone who had to grow up in the church and never had the fresh experience and like how they managed that. Then you can talk to someone else and they'd be like, oh man, I was a drug dealer. And, I met Jesus when I was 45 and, this is what my life has looked like ever since, So yeah. I think it's always a fresh supply if you're getting people's stories as well.
Yeah. And also just to add to that, like, isn't our programs kind of designed by like, the church board or something like that? We have usually someone is the one who's designing that, and usually the communications director is the one who's also in communication with them in order to repurpose the content itself. I mean, they're the ones who are going to be distributing it, right? What could be done, and this could be like for someone who's a communications director or someone of their church, is try to bring into your strategy, and you know what I'm saying? So have a segment in your Sabbath program where you ask a member to sit down, right, and to share their testimony, in front of the whole church. Take a video of that, and then or record that, and then put that into your podcast. So instead of publishing the sermon on your podcast feed, or maybe you want to continue to publish your sermon. That's perfectly fine. But you can publish the sermon and then publish the testimony as well, which would probably be more likely to be listened than the sermon itself. Maybe someone does like to listen to the sermon at home, and that's perfectly fine.
Mhm.
Live streaming usually does that pretty well, right? So
Yeah.
you can approach it like that, where you make it an internal strategy to do that. So you're posting content regularly without even really having to like spend an hour in a studio after church recording an interview podcast. It could just be built into
Yeah.
your regular habits. Yeah.
I feel like there's another interesting thing, and something that the church has historically shied away from is influencer culture, for better or worse, right? Like having a person who's the figurehead of something. Often we like the institution to be the face because then there's less risks, etc. I think that there is a shift in that, and like we've been talking a lot at the local level, but I sort of want to take a little bit of a step backwards and like look at the conference level. I like the fact that I'm seeing some willingness to try to bring in people, real faces, to be the face of things. And I know this has worked in the past, like for some of the larger ministries. Amazing Facts, Doug Batchelor has been leading that for a really long time. Sean Boonstra was at Voice of Prophecy for many years. John Bradshaw, all of these people that were the face of a ministry, and that tends to work very well. But these ministries are all external to the church. But what I find interesting is that the church is now allowing pastors, or even encouraging in some cases pastors, to build those followings so they can be doing ministry not just locally, but in that online footprint as well. One that I want to highlight in particular, Pastor Christian Copacciano from North New South Wales Conference. He is doing a podcast right now. It is flat out, it is the best example that I have seen of the church, a church produced podcast. That I can't think of anything that I've seen that's better. And I am really happy to see that. I have a lot of confidence in that approach, and I think they've positioned him, or he's positioned himself really, really well. And I would love to see more of that happening with different demographics. I think we should be consciously going after, okay, he's reaching, he's targeting young men, right? Like that's the demographic that he's chasing, and you can even see the styling is very similar to some of those podcasts, like Modern Wisdom, Diary of a CEO. That's the styling that he's kind of using for his message. But we should be doing that for a whole bunch of different avatars, and I think that would be a really interesting approach for us to take.
That's a really good observation. Yeah. So what avenues do you specifically feel like people should go down? And what avatars?
Yeah, well, I think that we should be covering them all, but I would start with the ones that are the most in need and the most available, right? So the people who are chronically online are often going to be
like health,
young mothers,
people who are suffering with health challenges.
Well, yeah, sure. Like pick a specific interest category. But I was going to say, like, young mothers. There's so many, in the secular world, right? There's so many people that are serving that need. Where are we doing that in the church? And like, I know there's mums at the table. We've got some brands that are on that, but like, that's a big segment. I think, the Gen Z, like that. There, those of them that are in their 20s right now, especially on the younger end of Gen Z, I think they have there's so much content that's out there, but there is a huge communications gap between millennials and Gen Z. I know and love young people that are around me at church, the youth that are there, and I have conversations with them to figure out like what they're watching, what are they consuming, what interests them, and what the culture, the communication culture that generation has is way different to what the millennials had. And like the difference between millennials and Gen X, it wasn't huge. There was this like blend from Gen X to millennials, and you can kind of see that. But the gap from the millennials to Gen Z, that's a huge gap. And so I don't think that anybody who's not tailoring their message for Gen Z, I don't think they're going to be tapping anybody in that market. So yeah, I think we should be looking at all verticals, but yeah, the ones that are the most chronically online, I would start
Yeah.
with.
I also try to get into the minds of the younger people in my church as well. It's quite fun
Yeah.
sometimes to venture into their world and to understand just what they're thinking, what do they consume and stuff like that.
All right, so Kahn, one of the things as we sort of get towards the end of our discussion, one of the things that I'm curious about is based on what you've looked at, if you were going to, I know you've started several podcasts and you've edited for many across the course of time, but if you were to say this is the kind of podcast that I would love to see more people making, what kind of show would you love to see more of? And I'm not I mean, a lot of our conversation today has been limited to local church settings where there's limited resources, but I mean, like, all holds barred, like just anything. If you could say this is a type of podcast or more of this kind of thing that Adventists should be producing, what is the thing or a couple of things depending on how you want to answer?
That's such a hard question. But
I know I love asking things that there are no answers to, but
there's no definite answer to that question. But just for myself personally, I don't know. I kind of feel like there could be some more content that is being produced, like interview podcasts or panel podcasts that are dealing with current issues in the world. I haven't seen any podcasts that have been produced that are looking at the current events of this, that the news and things like that is being created and just having a discussion about it. I haven't seen that. Another one would be like the daily devotionals for adults specifically, or even daily stories. Like just daily storytelling has been done in our church for kids, but not for adults. Yeah, that's something that I would like to see more of.
Yeah. Story is powerful, right?
That's right.
And I know, like one of the ways, because there's different ways that those stories can be told.
Yeah.
One of the things that I think our church could learn from that I think would be very interesting is, there's other Christian organizations out there that I think do a great job of identifying gaps and filling them with interesting programming. Christianity Today, that they have like a rolling batch of podcasts that are interesting and I think generally well produced. And I think the ALC, the Adventist Learning Community, I think they're probably the only organization that I know of in Adventism that have sponsored shows in the same way. And the shows that have come out of that, I think generally the ones that I'm aware of have been really positive. And so I would love to see more Adventist organizations enabling that kind of production to happen, because there's a million ideas that could be executed if there was just the backing for them. So
and also just we have been talking with Creation Sabbath about creating a podcast for them. They are under the Creation Science Research, the Geoscience Research Institute. They and Creation Sabbath and the GRI work together. They're part of the Creation and Faith and Science department in the General Conference, and so we're collaborating with them to create a podcast for Creation Sabbath, which is a yearly event that happens in October. And that is going to be held in the GC, in the General Conference Studios. So, I mean, they have the facilities available, and it's not like the church doesn't have the facilities available. It's just that the initiatives, I think, are slowly coming up, and maybe we will see that in the next year in 2026. Hopefully by the same time next year, I won't be saying 34 podcasts had stopped production. Hopefully we'll say 34 more podcasts have, been created this year.
Yeah, absolutely. So just as we do wrap up, Kahn, I'm going to throw to you, you can say anything that you would like to the audience, but what I would encourage, if anybody out there is an Adventist who is running a podcast and we don't have them on our list, please send us a message. You can go onto our website, send us a message. We would love to be able to add to our database because we're always looking to keep that up to date. If there's anybody, especially if it's a church or even at conference or administration levels, if you would like to be more involved in podcasting as a medium, I would really recommend reaching out to have a conversation, especially with Kahn. Like, it's something that we have experience with on our team, and we would love to assist with if we can. So, Kahn, is there anything that you'd like to say, or any way that people can get in touch with you if they would like to, have a conversation about anything that has been on this show?
Yeah, I would like to say that we have a webpage available on bluevineyard.com. We have all the information there about our services, and then you will also see on there that we have a resource available, free resource for podcast launch. You can learn if you would like to learn how to start your own podcast. You can use that; it's completely free. But yeah, if you would like to talk to me about even a consultation and to audit your podcast, or to explore ways that you can, maybe do things a bit differently, I'll be more than happy to. You can check out our website, and my email's on there as well. If you do want to reach out to me. So yeah.
Excellent. All right. Well, thank you so much, Kahn, for being on the show, and thank you guys for listening. We will be back with another episode soon. God bless. Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Blue Vineyard Podcast. For more episodes, information about our services, and more, please visit bluevineyard.com.